Welcome, curious minds, to Paranormal M. Join us as we unearth stories that defy explanation. Subscribe and turn on notifications to be the first to delve into our latest mysterious adventures. We hope you're ready to question reality. Do we have a ghost? A little bit of backstory myself. Male 31. My girlfriend, female 26. Recently, like 6 months ago, moved into a block of flats next to a busy train line and on the site of an old granary. In her first couple of days of living here, my girlfriend was doing the dishes. She felt a tap on her shoulder, turned around expecting it to be me. No one was there at the same time I was coming out of the main bathroom. I saw what looked like a foot. It was retreating to the bedroom, which I followed into the room and then the en suite. Called for her to then call back from the kitchen. We've then had a lot of interesting, what can only be described as interactions, with what we assume is a spirit. We have a TV and the surround sound in the living room that the sound bypasses, the speakers to the TV to the surround sound, which can be manually turned on. Late one night a couple of months ago, I woke up to a glow down the hallway, and a sound went through to find the TV and surround sound turned on with normal TV playing, which we never use because we couldn't have left this on and the sound turns off after a few minutes with no active sound. We also bought an Xbox 360 when we moved in, and that was working fine for the first 4 months. A couple of months ago, every so often this would randomly turn on and the disc tray would open, and it would stay on until one of us would manually turn it off. While I was at work and my girlfriend was at home, 3 weeks ago it happened again. She thought she would ask out loud if it was our ghost friend, put the disc tray in and out. We since then have had this happen more frequently, and it started responding through the disc tray. When I asked if it died here, it turned off the console. Now, when it seems to have enough of our conversations, it turns it off. This morning it woke me up turning the Xbox on again, and it's done it a few times today, whenever I've been in the room. My girlfriend and myself went for a shower. She had no marks on her when we came out, had sex, and once we finished, the Xbox turned on again and kept doing the disc tray thing until we went through. I asked it if it liked me, and it responded when I asked if it wanted us to go back through the bedroom to turn off the console again. We got back through the bedroom and we noticed some red scratches on my girlfriend's lower stomach area. We've had a few early pre-test signs recently. Maybe she's been pregnant, feeling a bit off that makes these scratches, well, they've turned up. Talking cat. Why? I know the title sounds silly, but I had a cat that would talk at times. I'm not sure if this is paranormal or if she was just smart. When I was 5, I got a kitten named Fluffy. One day she was getting out of her litter box. I was trying to see her poop. I was a curious 5-year-old. And she said, "Ut, ut, ut, ut." When I tried looking, so I stopped. I tried again and she said it again. 6 years later, my mom, sister, and I were trying to give Fluffy some medicine. Mom put some medicine on her nose to lick it off, and when she licked it off, she clearly said, "Yum, yum." We all heard it. There were other times, not as obvious, where she sort of understood what was being said. She got angry when I told my mom that she fell off the window ledge. She would get angry when we would say outside the cat's name. And another time when I told her to leave my room, she got up and left. All these stories of her happened over a span of 17 years. I'm not trolling at all, I just want to know what the reason for this was. Was she just smart, or was there something else going on? Fantastic coincidences. February 28th. My father died on February 28, 1996. In late February 2013, as my hospitalized mother became aware of her own imminent death, she said at least twice that she wanted to die on February 28th also. On February 27th, she took a turn for the worst. The decision was made to stop artificial life support, as per her advance directive. We spent the night of the 27th and 28th with my mother in her hospital room. Fairly early in the morning of the 28th, a medical team arrived. She was removed from life support. The doctor apologized to us because the intent to remove her from life support on the 27th, but something had gone wrong. So my mother got to die on February 28th. This was as she wished because of a mix-up by the medical team. About a year later, we bought a new car with some of the money that we had inherited from Mom. We had the new plates mailed to us, and the plates were /R 228. I don't know what, if anything, the letters might signify. I don't want to publicize the full license number, but the letters are interesting. But the 228, that is 1 in a 999 chance when the possible 3-digit combination starts with 001, correct? Skippy and the Reddit post. My mother's first dog, which she had as a girl, was a fox terrier she named Skippy. When I was growing up, she several times talked about her memories of that dog. About 2 years before she died, she decided to get another dog, a grown Yorkshire Terrier, whose last owner had died. She decided to name him Skippy, not knowing his original name. After Mom died, another home was found for poor Skippy, with another elderly lady. Soon after my mother died, I noticed an interesting post on Reddit. It said, "So this cute little dog we call Skippy comes to my dad's house every day for treats. Today he brought his duck friend, Henry." The attached photo showed a dog and a duck standing outside an open door looking in. The dog in the photo was named Skippy, and it was a Yorkshire Terrier, and my father's name was Henry. And guess how many comments there were when I first saw the post? 228. Screenshot. Haunted guitar. I thrifted a 50th anniversary Fender Strat from Goodwill for $16, and I was ecstatic, despite it being beat to hell, like rusted and the finish was damaged. I leaned it against my wall, and throughout the night I kept waking up, and my attention was immediately drawn to it every single time. The next day I cleaned it up, and since then it's felt like there's just a whole other person in my room with me at all times. It doesn't feel evil or malicious. Take this next bit with a grain of salt, because I have no way to prove it. I downloaded one of those spirit box apps that scan through radio waves and decided to try talking to it. I got pretty much nothing at first and told it I'd leave it alone. After asking a few music-related questions. Anyway, later on, my mom and I are in my room just chatting, and suddenly her Pandora app opens to a station. I decided to open the app again, and this time I swear we both heard "kill yourself" 3 times, and then a "piss off." We kept asking questions and asked what kind of music it wants to hear, and my mom heard Giants. So we played They Might Be Giants. We asked what it thought and got a beautiful. A few more questions were answered, and that's when me and my mom left the room. Everything else I asked was ignored. I'm kind of freaking out here. I think I'm tapping into the spiritual world, but I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I don't know much about it. As I'm typing this, my heart's beating out of my chest. I was laying in my bed and I had this weird feeling in my gut out of nowhere. Can't explain it. I was just incredibly uneasy. Then I noticed my bedroom windows were all open and my curtains were wide open. It's the middle of the night and I thought, this is weird. I always close the windows because winter nights are very cold in the UK. The little light was on in my room. It was bright enough for me to see every piece of furniture in my room clearly, and everything just felt off. I kind of told myself to calm down. It didn't feel like I was nervous. It just felt like something was really bad. One of my hands are shaking extremely hard as I'm typing this because I'm still so shook up from everything that happened tonight. For your information, I'm really bad at math. I could just never get it. Wanted to know how many days there are until a certain date, and I heard a faint whisper coming from inside my pillow, saying how many days there were. I wanted to laugh. Then I searched it up and it was correct. That's when I started to feel so sick and nervous that I was dizzy. I stood up, closed the windows, and turned off the lights and returned to my bed. I realized I should post about this on Reddit because all my friends are sleeping and I can't message them for at least a few hours. It's 4 a.m. in the UK. So just before I go on Reddit, a random song I've only listened to 2 or 3 times in my entire life just springs to my mind. I wouldn't stop playing. It quickly became an earworm, so I decided to just play music on my phone so it would stop bothering me. I shuffle all my music and that exact song starts playing, which just makes everything so much worse because it feels like someone or something's messing with me. I know as I'm typing this, my head is spinning. I can't even concentrate. The world feels so silent even though I have music pretty much blasting in my ears. Now every song that I play, even if it's a song I've never heard before, it feels like I've listened to it 1,000 times before. I want to find excitement in this new spiritual paranormal lifestyle, but I just feel so dead, but at the same time almost anxious now that I know that they're real. My life's getting so crazy. I am a weird person, so this should interest me. But it just keeps getting worse, and I'm beginning to get a little scared of what's going on outside, because I don't want a bad spiritual experience to happen. People before told me that maybe there was a gas leak in my home, but these events have been happening for at least 3 weeks now. So if that was the case, I'd probably be dead from the poisoning. Maybe I did die and slip into a different reality, but I have no proof to back that up yet. I've suspected it before, though, after I did something bad and felt like I was dying, and then suddenly everything was okay with my health. I don't like to post about things unless it feels very real, because then I'll have to post about every little weird thing that happened to me in the past month. My childhood imaginary friend was a ghost. I've been thinking about my imaginary friend from childhood a lot lately. I just have so many questions. At this point, I'm looking for any kind of help or answers as to what was going on. To preface this, I was always able to see ghosts, especially as a child. There have been interactions between myself and some of them. Some that I was scared of and some that stuck around. Enter Suki. When I was very young in the mid-90s, I formed a friendship with Suki, my imaginary friend. I always referred to her as imaginary friend because nobody else could see her. I didn't get the same vibe that the other ghosts gave me, so I guess my child brain went the route of thinking she was an imaginary friend. I never questioned it. Probably because I was an incredibly lonely child. Hindsight is 20/20, and I now recognize that she was absolutely a spirit. We did so much together. We always hung out, watched TV, went on vacation together. Driving, she never flew, though. And one of our favorite things to do together was climbing down the cliff face at a coast to explore the beach. She always sat in the middle seat in the back of the car with us, between me and my sister. And I always bucked her. She told me that her name was Suki, so that was never a question. I was keenly aware that this version of the name was not Americanized like being short for Suzanne, but of a different origin. She wasn't a child like I was, but she also wasn't very old either. To me, she seemed to be maybe in her mid to late teens, but she was very dainty. As far as her appearance, she always wore a long white dress, had very long black, disheveled hair. And her facial features were very sunken in, especially her eyes. She never smiled. She was also very pale. Does this sound familiar? Because it should. She looked exactly like Samara from The Ring. Imagine how utterly shocked I was when I saw that movie for the first time as an adult, jumping up and screaming, "Oh my God, that's Suki!" The Ring came out many years after this started, and this also predates Netflix deliveries and Google. It couldn't have been influenced by any ghost or horror media because, well, readily available knowledge that you could just look up online simply didn't exist back then the way it exists today. I also didn't have any physical media of anything like that lying around the house. That was not a genre that my parents were into. I'd been researching this for some time. The closest thing to her that I can seem to pinpoint is she seems remarkably similar appearance-wise to the Yuri from Japanese folklore, which I can only imagine that Samara is also inspired by. I'm not too familiar with the inspirations there, though. I was never afraid of her. She looked scary, but she never scared me. She never gave me any kind of threatening vibes. I just want to make that very, very clear. At the end of the day, as I got older, I just stopped seeing her at some point, which kind of makes me sad, but I don't feel like she ever left. I think about her nearly every day. It's my Roman Empire. I wasn't born alone. Okay, the title sounds creepy as hell, but it's actually true, according to what I've been told. I wasn't born alone. I had another spirit with me, and I'll explain how I found that out. I never felt like I was from Earth, never felt human. I've always worried about where I came from, what my mission on Earth is. Mind you, this is when I was a child. I don't think like this anymore. I was a very spiritual kid and one of those kids who would say weird things to their mom about their past lives. I've also always had vivid dreams and have a deep interest in them. And I keep this information as it'll become important. I was also constantly afraid of being watched. I used to worry that a spirit was watching me when I went to sleep. With time, I randomly started to worry that a ghost girl was sitting on my bed and watching me. It felt a bit too real. I had many nightmares that someone was chasing me, especially a dark figure. When I woke up, I usually ran out of my room. Then, when I was 11, this dark figure actually caught me for the first time. I was forced to look at its face. It was a girl similar to the one I imagined sitting on my bed. She held me in place and asked me to do something for her, and if I did it, she would let me move away. I didn't even listen before agreeing because I was so scared. She laughed and jumped at me, which made me wake up. That was my first sleep paralysis. I remember looking around with just my eyes, unable to move my body, and seeing the girl laying down next to me. After that, I constantly had dreams about her. And not only dreams, sometimes I could interact with her by just closing my eyes. I would get into a trance and she manipulated my mind. Yeah, I know that sounds weird, but it's what happened. If I closed my eyes and I imagined her, my imagination would soon become almost vivid, like reality vivid. She controlled herself in my imagination. It's like I couldn't control what she did in the way I imagined her. She would often just smile and give me jump scares, literally jumping and grabbing me. It always left me with a weird sensation all over my body, like I was vibrating. I also had a few out-of-body experiences. One time I was just sitting down and stood up, but instead of standing up with my physical body, I stood up with my spirit. I turned around and saw myself, then re-entered my own body. It was a very scary moment, and there was a bunch of people around me when it happened. so I had to pretend nothing happened. This is how I remember it. I was still a kid. After a few years, my mom called a medium to help me with my situation. I honestly didn't understand much of what happened in my sessions with the medium, but the girl stopped appearing to me after them. My mom didn't explain it all to me until I was a bit older. So she told me that the medium found out that the girl I interacted with was a spirit from a past life that I had. Someone who loved me, and she was still attached to me, so she couldn't move on. She wanted to stay with me, so she chased and grabbed me. That would explain why I was so spiritual and felt disconnected from the world. I had someone from my past life right there, always by my side. Woman and child. This incident happened a few months ago while I worked at a former police department here in the southeastern U.S. I was a patrol officer there, and our shifts at the time were 12-hour shifts, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. I enjoyed working nights. A lot of fun and crazy things happened which kept things interesting. The night started as it usually does. A shift briefing, pass on, general pre-shift shenanigans. I'd say about the first 3 to 4 hours were pretty normal. Wrecks, domestic disturbances and the like. But I'd say 11:30 to 45 we received a call for a severe wreck. A black sedan rolled over and was upside down in a ditch. The callers they never stopped, but they said they didn't see anyone in or around the vehicle. I was the second on scene, with my sergeant being the first. Now, I've been to some gruesome scenes, gunshot and stabbing victims, welfare checks to find decomposing bodies, and other homicide-suicide scenes. I was generally okay with handling them, but nothing could have prepared me for this scene. In the car was an infant's child seat ripped from the restraints. My first hope was there wasn't a child in the car. The further investigation, the front windshield wasn't even attached to the car. It happens in a rollover, but about 30 feet away, knee-high grass. I saw a depression from what looked to be something displacing the grass. As I approached, I saw a mangled leg twisted and contorted. Then the body of a woman, 28 years old, based on her driver's license. In and out of consciousness, hardly able to speak. When I found her, fire was rolling on the scene. I radioed to them, found a victim. Despite the noise I heard distinctly, "Where's my baby?" When I looked down on her, she was staring at me. My heart sank. There was a child somewhere either in the vehicle or ejected. I immediately began searching the field after telling my sergeant that a child was also in the vehicle. We searched and eventually, and fortunately, that was the moment something in me just changed. After the mother and child were transported, we learned that the mother succumbed to her wounds. A single car, 2-fatality wreck. I was placed on admin leave. We had to speak with a psychiatrist for several days until that deemed it okay for me to return to shift. My first night back was routine calls that we usually had, the same as the second night. The third night we received a call, once again a wreck, on the same road as before in the same manner. I was closer to the location and arrived on the scene first, mind racing, heart going 100 miles an hour. The memories flooded back from the first collision, but as I rolled up to the scene, nothing. No wreck, just an empty field in darkness. My blue lights were on, and so were my scene lights. Confused if I was at the right location, I radioed my dispatch to confirm to them that I had acknowledged I was in the right place. I scanned, and nothing was out of the norm. Nothing was disturbed. The ground looked the same as it had. Thought perhaps this was a cruel prank call, maybe an error on the caller. So I got in my patrol car, turned my blue lights off, and prepared to drive further down the road to search. As I placed my car into drive, I noticed movement out of the peripherals. but when I looked, there was just inky darkness. Shook it off and drove off. I never found the second supposed accident and ended up being told to clear up as other calls were waiting. But later that night, when things began to calm down, around 3:30 a.m., I decided to drive down that road once again. As I turned left onto the road, I felt as if something nudged my right arm. Instantly, my hair on my arm stood up on end and I got the chills. No one else was in the car with me, but I tried to rationalize it. I continued on down the road. As I approached the original wreck scene, I saw off to the side of the road what appeared to be someone standing in the distance in the field. Despite the distance and being in the shadows of my headlights, I could tell what clothes they were wearing. Blue jeans, light shirt. But what caught me off guard was I could see the figure holding something in its arms. As I got closer, I slowed down to a crawl, trying to use my spotlight to see better. But when to look again, there was nothing there. Something in me told me to stop the car. I did. As I got out, I looked into the field with my flashlight from the roadside. Behind me and on the other side of the road from where the field was a wooded plot of land. From there, I could hear what sounded like footsteps, but lighter. This was late autumn, but there was a lot of leaves on the ground, so there should have been more noise as something was walking around on freshly fallen leaves. I informed my dispatch that I was stepping out of my vehicle and where. As I ventured out into the field, I found the original spot where the mother laid. Gauze, gloves, and various other medical bandages still laid there intertwined in the long grass. Despite being late autumn, the temperature was sitting around 55 degrees Fahrenheit, but as I approached, I could feel the temperature drop. I got the chills again, goosebumps, and a feeling as if I was being watched. I scanned again, and still nothing. As I left the spot and began walking back to my car, I looked down as to not trip as I went. I looked up and my heart sank. Standing on the driver's side of my car, illuminated ever so faintly, but not enough to see a face, was a woman holding clearly a child in her arms. It was clear, the same clothes as before, but an obscured face. I called out to her and continued my way to her, trying to shine my flashlight at her, but as I did, I saw her step back into the shadows, my flashlight seemingly not able to pierce the darkness. As I got to my car, I called out again, searched with my flashlight, even going as far as turning my scene lights on. Nothing. Paranoid, I searched my vehicle, searched the wood line, and the feeling of dread became just too strong. I eventually got into my car and left. Shaken up by the experience, I called my sergeant and told him what happened. PTSD, he said, and I was told to take the next several days off and speak with the counselor. Messed me up. After everything that was said and done, I did return to work a week later. I just never went back down that road by myself while employed there. Several other people witnessed the same experience after I left. Even people who were never even on the scene during the wreck. All describing them, saying they saw a woman holding a child in the field in the tree line. I had to tell my husband that he died. In October 2017, I lost my husband while 7 weeks pregnant. The day he died, I left to work in a hurry. We shared some texts after he woke up about a phone interview that he had later in the day about him having some pain in his leg. Then a quick phone call, a couple hours later, to tell me that he was running to the pharmacy for pain meds. I attempted several calls about an hour later to make sure it was home safe. There was no answer, which wasn't like him. I tried calling him for hours until finally a woman answered his phone stating that he was in the sheriff's department. Asked me to come home. At the time I worked in a prison, and out of fear that he'd gotten into some sort of trouble, left my post, got to my car, and sped the whole 30-minute drive back to town. Upon turning to our parking garage, I see a large white van that read Coroner. As I walked up to her home, I was greeted by the same lady on the phone blocking my view into her home. She let me know that my husband suffered a heart attack, later confirmed as a pulmonary embolism, explaining the leg pain he mentioned the morning of his death. Apparently, my husband made it back home and into the house and locked the security door before collapsing from a heart attack. He screamed for help. Our neighbor and her son heard and ran over to help, but they couldn't get into the house due to all the doors and windows being locked. The son later apologized for not breaking a window, stated due to the shock and panic he'd lost all sense of reason. They were able to talk to him through the door while they called 911, but unfortunately he stopped responding a few moments before help arrived. He was pronounced dead on arrival. A week or so after his service, his best friend's wife offered a cleansing and a card reading by her mom. Although I was skeptical at the moment, I was desperate for any kind of communication with them or closure. She mentioned a lot of interesting things in the reading, but the most prominent for me was that he was currently in a stage after death where the soul relives its whole life. She compared it to when people say their life flashes before their eyes. She said it was a place every soul visits after death as a way to reflect on the way that they lived their life and the person that they were. She told me his death was so sudden that he hadn't realized he had died yet, that I'd need help for him to cross over. She said she felt that I was the one that would help him, and instructed me to light white candles in a jar of water to guide him to peace. Fast forward a few months later, and I moved into my parents' house. I was laying on the couch and started to feel very heavy, as if I'd been administered anesthesia. It was definitely some type of sleep paralysis that I was feeling. When I could finally open my eyes, I was still laying on the couch in my parents' living room, except my husband was sitting on a chair right in front of me. As clear and as real as before he died. Before I could speak, he began telling me he was nervous for his phone interview, the one he was supposed to have the day he passed. He told me he was excited and hopeful that he'd get the job, and wanted help preparing for it. I looked at him with pain and tears, and he began to repeatedly ask me what was wrong. I apologized. "Baby, I'm so sorry. Do you remember the pain you had in your leg? You had blood clots. One made its way to your heart. You aren't going to make it to the interview, baby. You died." I'll never forget the look in his face. It was a long period of confusion that turned into realization. I apologized again, told him I loved him, and begged him to respond. He just sat there with a strange look in his face. I immediately woke up. The chair from my parents' kitchen table now sat right in front of me, empty. Never dreamed of him after that. I pray it's because I helped him get closure that he needed to cross over. We have a 5-year-old son now who dreams very specific dreams about his dad. He wakes up talking about things that he couldn't possibly know unless it came straight from him. Losing my husband was the first real experience with death, but it brought me peace to have my own bit of confirmation that there is something more after life. My first paranormal experience with ghosts. In brackets, fucking real. I didn't believe any of these things until one day. I was in a rush because my father was in a hospital on the other side of Spain. When I reached the town, I didn't have a place to stay, so I just jumped inside an abandoned house. It was a huge, immense house with 4 levels and like 30 rooms. It had a huge hole in the center, just like if a meteorite blasted there. It felt very silent and deep, a dark and creepy energy inside the house, so I decided to camp on the rooftop. I only stayed there for about a week. On the 5th day, I got a new house with a friend, but I still had to stay there 2 more days. I decided to explore that house in the daylight, went through many rooms, had at least 3 big rooms for children maybe, no pictures of the people from the house. The energy went stronger and stronger in the back of the house. I reached the back and there was a wall. It was the house limits, so after that, it was another neighbor. I listened to a voice inside my head. "Put your hand inside the wall and grab it." I was like, "What?" I said to myself, I may just be crazy, but let's try. Put my hand above the wall and inside into a hole. Grabbed an X-ray. That was when I went to my hands and I looked close to it. It was the X-ray of a child. by the size of the thorax. It had a problem. It had a tumor the size of an 8-ball. Immediately, I was in shock realizing stuff, put the picture back. I was scared because I felt a presence in this house all the time, like someone was behind me or watching me. When I climbed the debris back, I found this picture in a hole in the wall, and it was near the entrance, where it belonged to a hall before that hall was destroyed. I grabbed the picture, asking myself how the heck I didn't realize it was there. Gave it a close look. It was a picture of a 7-year-old child smiling, very happy and healthy, almost as if he was staring at me. The strange thing was, the picture was the exact same wall I was staring at that was now destroyed. I put it back in the hole, and was just about to happen after just being traumatized to this day. The picture was swallowed to the left. I looked left and there was no hole. The picture was pulled like a magnet, very fast, very clear. Thought it was a rat, but nope, the damn wall had no holes. I grabbed my stuff and just ran. Strange light in the woods. So the following happened to me one night a few years ago that I still don't quite understand what I could have seen. I live on an acre in a neighborhood. Toward the back of my property, front half is fenced. Back half is my shed surrounded by trees. There's sparse woods that separate my property from my neighbors. One night as I'm walking to the back to get something out of my shed, carrying my phone with a flashlight on so I can see, I open the back gate and take a few steps past when I suddenly see a strange white light blink into existence about 50 feet in front of me, to the left, just inside the tree line. Best I can describe the light is it looked like a round Christmas light, except it didn't radiate the light outward like a light bulb does. It lasts about 1 to 2 seconds, then just blinks out of existence. That is until it blinked back on only a second later, but about 10 feet closer to me. Did this multiple times, always staying just inside the tree line, arching toward me. Staying at the same height from the ground each time, maybe 3 or 4 feet in the air. The last time it blinked on, it was only a few feet in front of me, just outside the tree line this time. And in a panic, I raised my phone's flashlight. Saw nothing there, no lightning bug, which I've never seen in the woods around my house, though they do live in my state, or any other insect flying. I fast walked right back to my porch, looked back where I was, and stayed there for several minutes waiting to see it again. Never appeared. After a few years later, I've never encountered the light again, and still have no logical way of explaining what I saw. The Haunted Staircase. The first strange thing happened not long after we moved into our house. One night I was sitting on a couch in the living room facing the TV, which was also in the direction of the stairs and the entry to the kitchen. Just able to see both with the peripheral vision. I then noticed movement going up the stairs, so I call out to my wife and she's going to bed. She calls out, "No, I'm in the bathroom." So I say, "Never mind, just thought I saw you walk upstairs." Noticed it a couple more times, and eventually I tried to investigate it. Figured maybe it was just a shadow caused from car lights driving by. But after several cars passed by, no shadows were made. My wife asked me why I kept looking at the stairs and front door. So I told her, I could swear I see a shadow of a person out of the corner of my eye, but when I look, there's nothing. She just kind of looks at me semi-worried and says, "You mean on the staircase?" Turns out she's seen it multiple times, but always just wrote it off as well. I started joking that we had a shadow man in her house. She told me to stop because it seems kind of creepy. Can't remember how many days later it was, but another night we were laying in bed, both scrolling on our phones. We hear a strange thumping sound coming from downstairs, growing slightly louder. Both of us are freaked out, and unfortunately, being the man, I got my handgun out of the dresser drawer and got out of bed as quietly as I could in case something was about to attack us. thumping stops. I wait a few seconds. Silence. I open my bedroom door and quickly step around the corner with my gun raised and ready. There is no one there. I see the front door is locked and there's no light on downstairs. So I look around and find all the windows and doors are locked. The next day, while I was quickly walking upstairs, I realized that the sound of my feet hitting the steps was the same sound we heard the night before. Something was on the staircase. Now I flash forward to just a few days ago. Me and my wife were in our dining room, opposite side of the staircase from the living room with the door to the half bath under the stairs, the same room, getting our daughter ready to go to the stores. Now I had my back turned, so I didn't see it happen, but my wife saw a wire frame reindeer that we have on a shelf, sitting on the right side of the metal frame tissue holder on the left, above our toilet, fly forward several feet, hit the baseboard on the opposite wall, left side of the toilet, and then lay still on the floor. I put the deer back on the shelf and again attempted to recreate it somehow, falling or bouncing off the toilet to get where it landed. But the only way that it fell, it landed on the toilet that was open or bounced off the rim to the right of the toilet. I don't get the feeling that whatever it was causing it was strange or that it was malevolent, but it certainly wanted to make its presence known. To the best of my knowledge, no one had died in this house. Didn't ask when we bought it, but for whatever reason, it's only confined to the staircase and not the whole house. We've also noticed our daughter look up the staircase at times and talk and reach up toward the second floor, then laugh and run away like to play chase, run around the house. She can go up and down the stairs by herself and tells us when she's going upstairs to her playroom. So again, very strange. Nursing home night shift. I've been a CNA for 6 years. I've had a lot of paranormal experiences during the night shift, between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. The first place I worked, I got a call light in a room where somebody had recently passed away. I was the only person working in that part of the building. When I got to the room, it was locked like usual. When I unlocked it and went into the cord and the wall was pulled, needing to be reset. But no one was in there. That same place had an activity room with a couple armchairs and a couch. I was laying on the couch one night playing on my phone. I had my pager sitting next to me. It suddenly flew off the couch so fast like somebody had smacked it as hard as they could. That same place also had a basement that had a motion detecting light in all 3 rooms. I walked into the first room to grab something. When I walked back out, every single room in the hallway had the lights on. You could always hear people running up and down the halls or across the ceiling, but if you went to investigate, no one was ever there. The scariest time was when I was working a bunch of double shifts. I decided to take a nap in the break room in the basement during my lunch break. I had sleep paralysis where I was stuck on the couch. There was an old man in the corner of the room watching me, but keeping his face hidden from me. I tried to move to get away, managed to break free and run out of the room a couple of times only to suddenly appear back on the couch. However, the second my break ended at 30 minutes, I was suddenly able to move. I sat up and as soon as I did, the lights went out. There was a timer. We should have turned it off after 5 minutes, but they stayed on the entire time until my break had ended, as if they had detected the person in the corner the whole time. The last crazy thing that I experienced was at a news center I was working at. I would always hear doors opening and slamming shut, or a lady's voice yelling at the end of the hallway. "Is anybody here?" But when I'd check, all the rooms everybody would be asleep in their beds. At the same facility, I went to a room to help somebody use the bathroom. When I got him, sat him up on the edge of the bed, and had him grab my arms, I said, "I'm going to help you stand up, so we can use the toilet real fast, okay?" And a woman right behind me, almost as if she was leaning over my right shoulder, said, "Okay," in reply. Obviously, no one was there. Moved into a new apartment. My husband and I have lived in our current place for a little over 2 years. It's a duplex that was built in the 70s. It was both our first time living without roommates, so neither of us had a lot of furniture. I remember the living room only having a rocking chair, a TV stand, and a coffee table that put out pillows to use as a couch. The house was very bare for the first few months. I've always been pretty sensitive to the paranormal. I have a lot of experiences throughout my life. I remember being so on edge that we had moved here. It always felt like there was someone else in the house with you. I tried to tell myself it was all in my head because I knew it was an older place. Tried not to think about it too much. I was working at a nearby hospital during this time. I had to be able to work early in the morning. Got up, got ready, and was ready to leave. The only problem was I couldn't find my keys anywhere. My husband and I searched the entire house. Like I mentioned earlier, the house was bare. There wasn't a lot of spots where it could be. Don't remember how I got to work that day either. I think my husband ended up taking me. We spent days looking for those keys. Pretty sure that we were just going to have to pay to have a new key made. However, one evening we were sitting in the living room. My husband goes, "Those your keys?" They were sitting underneath the rocking chair in plain sight. I had taken the cushions off that chair, flipped it over, moved it across the room while trying to find the keys, and suddenly they were there. But a couple more times where things went missing would randomly appear over the counter, or somewhere else obvious, but the keys have always stuck out to me. My husband also reminded me of another time when we first lived here. We were laying in bed one night on our phones and talking. We weren't sleeping yet. Out of nowhere, there was a pounding on our bedroom door, like someone had hit it as hard as they could. We both jumped up quick, thinking someone was in the house. But when we opened our bedroom door and looked around the house, it was empty. I don't think someone could have hit it and ran out in that time, without us hearing them. The floors are old, and every step you take is greeted by loud creaking floorboards. So we would have heard someone. After that, we decided to sage the house. It had such a cleaner feeling in the air afterwards. I don't know how to describe it really. Things stopped going missing too. It finally didn't feel like there was someone else there. We ended up saging pretty regularly after that. What did I see? Basically, I was lying in bed, starting to fall asleep with my girlfriend on the phone. I'd already started with some weird feelings in my body that made me open my eyes multiple times. Usually I'm the type that's asleep before my head hits the pillow. I had some weird pains in various places, my chest, arm, and head mostly. At one point I was even thinking I was about to die, have a heart attack or a stroke. Not that the pain was unbearable, but just such weird pains they were. Last time I opened my eyes, I somehow turned my head to the side, where my windows are. Everything is closed in my room. It has curtains that let no light pass, so the room is usually as dark as it can be. This is where I saw something. Panicked, started basically shouting for Google to turn on the lights. That didn't work. Because I was on the phone, of course. Between my bed and the windows, I saw a human-shaped outline. Not really big or menacing or anything, but a human-like shape. It was transparent. I could see the curtains through it, but like I was watching through heat. Those little waves you see rising from roads and cars when it's really hot. The outline was a bit lighter, not white, but definitely not dark. But I saw a distinct outline. This is what made me recognize the human-like form. However, still it made me panic. I actually tried touching it, tried to push it away while trying to get my lights on, but I didn't feel anything, only saw it slowly moving toward the bed. Now I'm left wondering what this was. If at all it was anything else from being half asleep and having some blurry vision, hoping anybody here can give me some information or had a similar experience. To end this all, I have to give some extra information. The house itself isn't that old. It was built at the end of the 70s. No known weird things. Also, nothing weird happened in the previous 4 years that I'd lived here. Been with my girlfriend for 2 years now. She's spiritual and religious, Latin American girl. And she's had encounters in the past that she says, but mostly as a child. She also used to lay tarot cards up in the first few months of our relationship. Talked with her about this, of course, and she thinks I was visited, but not necessarily by an evil or bad energy, because I saw a transparent shape with a more white outline. Not something dark or red or anything that would symbolize evil. She even says it could be an angel or my guardian angel because of the brighter outline. Now, as a non-religious atheist and someone who has no experience with the paranormal, I don't directly believe it, but it does have me thinking, especially since this was my first time I'd ever felt like this from anything unexplainable in all my 30 years of living. The day I realized death is not the end of a human life. Everything took place about 2 years ago. When it happened, all I knew about it messed with my mind with a week or two, and I told some of my friends this crazy story, bringing literal chills to the both of us after the story was told. I kind of forgot about it. I found this subreddit a day or two with some posts that reminded me of this story I'm about to tell. For context, my grandmother on my mother's side died from breast cancer 5 or 6 years ago. I knew the death of my grandmother affected my mom mentally. It was challenging for her to not cry on the daily. A year passed and my mother started to focus on other things and let my granny rest peacefully. Also, I knew very much my mother believed in signs from my grandmother. For example, when driving back from home from the funeral, she thought all the semi-trucks with big headlights were a sign of her presence. I was in the basement, late night, watching TV. I was pretty calm. I always hated being in the basement, though, and I still do. Brings some type of odd feeling. Suddenly, without any previous signs, I heard a loud knock on the door behind me. I quickly turned and stared for a couple of seconds. I then figured it was just the wood cracking. Not even a couple of minutes after, while still on my guard, another knock. But this time, it clearly wasn't the wood. I ran upstairs without even thinking, and my mom woke up because of all the noise from me running up the stairs. She asked me what was going on, and I told her about those really weird and abnormal noises. She seemed surprised and kind of scared. She told me that it was probably just the water pump or the wood. I told her it probably was, and I went to sleep. No news after that. A couple of days pass. Something else occurred. I was in my room, maybe 10 p.m. or so. I thought me, my sister, and my mom were home that night. I was on my cell phone scrolling through YouTube, I believe. But I heard a slight whisper in my ear. It was really soft and quiet. Thought I misheard something, or that it was my sister making noise in the bathroom. The whisper occurred again, exactly like last time. I figured it was something weird. I assumed it was my sister. I got up and banged on the bathroom door. It was unlocked, lights were off. I checked her room, empty and dark. I absolutely shat myself. My sister was not home. I ran down the stairs and found my mom on the couch and told her everything. She gave me the exact same look as last time I told her. She said it was pretty weird. I stayed with her. I didn't want to go back to my room alone. When I got tired, I quickly went to sleep and forgot about it again. I would say a week or two passed, and I was at a restaurant with my dad, mom, and sister. We were driving back home, and my dad just kind of wanted to talk, so I listened. On both of these nights, my mother prayed exactly 24 hours before I reported what happened to her, that my grandmother shows herself in some kind of way. I was absolutely mind blown. My dad told me I must have had some paranormal skills because I was the only one to witness those events. I'm not done. On the second time when I heard the whispers, it turns out when I was explaining the situation to my mom, the flipping music that was playing at my grandmother's funeral was playing on the TV. When my dad told me this, I was baffled. I believe in the presence of dead ones since then. Feel free to MAA. romanticizing the afterlife from a young age due to reoccurring dreams. I'm unsure if anybody else has had an experience like this, but from a very young age, I've romanticized dreams about the afterlife. Well, an entity in the afterlife. The earliest I remember it was probably around 7 or 8, but I had a dream that there was a ghost girl in my room, and me and her watched from my window as my childhood friends played outside without us. It was also a very somber mood, and even though words weren't spoken, I just knew that she wouldn't believe that we'd be there very long because she had to move away. I get similar dreams maybe twice a year. And while they differ, they always have the same ghost girl. Long black hair, everything else hidden in a dark purple, almost black cloak. I've never seen the skin color, eye color, or anything else, just the hair. The dreams always seem to have a somber mood, though aside from the first initial dream, I can't recall if anything causes that mood. This also has led to me having nearly no fear of ghosts, and although I personally am a non-believer, I heavily romanticize the thought of human-ghost interactions because of it. As in, it makes me believe that there's an incident that happened that would make me become a believer. It would have no chance of being a negative interaction. Does anyone know of a demon that's a dark shadow with a wolf-like head? Growing up at my parents' house, it was clear that it was haunted, even from a very young age. I was one of 6 kids, and we all agreed that we were constantly experiencing various different things. I had a friend who slept over one night, but left in the middle of the night and refused to come back to my house, even during the daytime. I can list all my experiences here, and it would last weeks. But to sum it up, I've heard voices, seen dark shadows, felt presences, and both me and my sister suffered from sleep paralysis. Quickly saw things. However, me and one of my sisters were the first 2 people to move out when we had each gotten married. And thankfully, both of us have since almost completely stopped experiencing anything altogether. What I wanted to ask was about today. It's an experience that stuck with me. I dreamed that my father was going to ask me to take down the Christmas decorations. I brought each bag one by one filled with decorations into the basement, and as I brought down the nativity set, I consciously thought to myself that I better make sure baby Jesus is not face down, because he'd probably be sacrilegious. Well, on my next trip down with more bags, I noticed that the baby Jesus had consciously made sure it was faced up, was now face down. Immediately I thought, oh shit, that's not good. When I looked up, I saw what looked to be a 7-foot pitch black shadow humanish figure that wasn't directly facing me, but more toward the side, giving me his profile. His head was not a human-shaped head, but rather almost like a pitch black shadow of a wolf's head. Without moving its mouth, it spoke to my mind in a deep voice, repeating, I found you, I found you, I found you, until I woke up. Immediately upon waking up and going downstairs, my father asked me to take down the Christmas decorations. I was like, fuck that. Does anybody else have an idea of what I experienced or what I encountered? Ironically, enough the apartment me and my wife moved is actually connected to the backyard to a cemetery with tombstones less than 500 feet from the bedroom window. I've never felt creeped out here, but in my parents' home, it was like a constant oppression. The feeling of always being watched. And pretty much everybody who spent time in that house has experienced things. Hell, even my friends have heard stuff through my Xbox mic. But I've always wanted to know what the fuck it was that I saw in my basement in that dream. Because I know in my heart that it was the entity that was in that house. For a while after that dream, my experiences had escalated.